Cool bananas. Welcome, Anthony, to Virtual Coffee. Cheers. I do
Cheers.
need I do need a coffee this morning because my children decided it was a great time at about 3 in the morning to visit my nice and comfy bed. Um, how are you doing this morning? Thank you for being here. And I love that you're here because you're one of my favorite people
Oh,
person in the
thank
world.
you. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I'm having tea this morning. Haven't got to my. I'm still in my fasting zone, so I can't drink coffee just yet. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
are you doing what sort of fasting are you
Just
doing?
an IF 16 by 8, was it 8 by
Yeah,
16?
yep,
Whatever it
yep.
is. Yeah.
Depends on which one you want to do. Yes.
Yep.
You're the second guest that has been in fasting mode on virtual coffee. So
Virtual
I'm glad
fast.
that it virtual fasting. The last Hugh, the last one we had a few weeks ago, I think he was doing a 3 day fast, and
Hmm.
I was sharing with him my 5 day fast,
Whoa.
which my children remember it as mummy shouldn't fast because she eats everything after.
That's what happens.
I'm like, well, fasting, starvation, sort of same.
So what, what
Excellent.
what what was the sort of key benefit of you doing that? I'm just curious. 'Cause I haven't done a
The
fun.
the key benefit, well, it was really I wanted to do it because it was about the exercise of the mind and to also prove to myself how much of what we do is mental.
Mm.
Right, like we can push through things, like as humans, like we're so powerful in our mind, like I guess even people thinking of intermittent fasting for the 16/8, like to sort of go, oh, I'm not going to have breakfast. Like I remember the first time I did it, and that, going to the lunchtime, I was like, oh my goodness, it's at 12 o'clock, yeah, and I've got to eat, and I just literally had like the food in front of me right on 12 o'clock. But now, if I do a full day fast, like it doesn't, and so just like it was so adaptable.
Yeah.
And the 5 day, like I wasn't intending to do a 5 days. I was only intending to do two, maximum three.
Mm.
And then, I posted up something on Facebook, good old Facebook, and everyone, obviously, different people at different messages, and they're like, "Oh, you should do 5." I'm like, "Stuff it, I'm gonna do 5." You know. And I got to day 3 was my worst, and I felt really sort of lethargic, and that like I had to have a coffee that day. Like I don't really usually have coffee, to be honest. It's usually like a tea or a chai or whatever.
Mm.
But that day I was feeling like really drained and lethargic, tired, cold because you didn't eat. But day 4, like I literally bounded out of bed,
Wow.
and I wasn't grumpy with, I mean, I have to say I wasn't really grumpy with anyone through the through the 5 days, so that was good. No children or husbands were hurt in the process. I still had to make meals as well, so but it is another thing about being surrounded by temptations or
Mm.
distractions. That was another thing. It really was more a practice in um in strengthening your mindset. Like
That's
even
huge.
even now I think about it and I go, how did I do 5 days without food? Because now I'm like every half an hour, ooh, what can I eat? So yeah, definitely, if you're ever inclined to, but like, everyone's got to step it up a little bit, right? 1 day, 2 days,
Mm.
3 days, and then if you want to do the full 5, then you know, um, we can all do it together. I might do a quarterly thing where we all just have a Facebook group of, you know,
Yeah.
people who don't eat for 5 days. Is that the best Facebook group? You can't even post food, food photos.
Yeah. Post what you're not eating.
Yeah, post what you're not eating. Post your facial expression when you are starving.
Yes.
That would be awesome. But today, Anthony, and I want to introduce everyone because we are talking about um, how do we know what virtual coffee is about is also about growing, inviting people to talk about how they're not just growing businesses but growing people. This is a part of it. I love your own personal journey. We've known each other for quite a while. I have to say, when I first dived into the whole, startup
World.
and that whole community, that whole world. You were one of the first people, I have to say, that sort of held my hand and went, "It's okay, we can do this." But and I've loved watching your journey. I love, understanding your own vision and mission, why you do what you do, because you were in the corporate world
Mm-hmm.
as well. And you've had personal challenges which also inspired you and motivated you to take a different path. But what I want to talk about and share with everyone today, and in Facebook land, is, oh, hey Sean, good morning. Yay, I caught the g'day. Um, is about case studies. All right, and so Anthony is a content strategist. So I'm going to do your little bio so people know who you are. He's a writer, he's a speaker, he's a brilliant writer. I love reading all his content. He's the director of Simple Creative Marketing, a company known for creating case studies and content that drives leads. Everyone's just going, leads, we want leads. So if you want content that drives leads, Anthony is the person to speak to, and that's why we have him here. Um, and driving sales for fast growing services businesses. He's worked for leading brands such as Bean Ninjas and Hub Australia, and has been featured in Forbes, Inc., and Huffington Post. Thank you, Anthony, for being here. It's an absolute pleasure. So let's talk about case studies,
Yes.
right? Why are case studies so important and such a great tool for building your business, your credibility, and so on?
Great question. So just to begin the conversation about case studies, we need to talk about testimonials and what's the
Mm,
difference, right? So for a lot of now, I'm thinking I've got services business in mind. I know you support services,
mhm,
and
mhm.
there may be some people who have products on here, but um, typically I'm not talking about restaurants when I'm thinking about services. I'm talking about professional services like
Yeah,
VA services, accountants, finance,
yeah,
real estate agents, people who
yes.
do that kind of work, right? So um, when we're talking about services, testimonials only get you so far. Testimonials are really basically a snippet of what a customer is saying about you or a client is saying about you. So they might have done some work with you and they say, hey, yeah, I was working with Margaret and she did an amazing job, loved what she did. And that's
Sure.
kind of what it is, that little paragraph that you stick on your, on your business card or on your website. Usually it goes on a website. Usually it goes on maybe LinkedIn, if that's where you're doing your social media. And that's as far as it gets usually, right? So the challenge I have with what I've seen with our clients with testimonials is one, they are so short and they don't really paint the full picture.
Mm,
So they
mm,
give you an idea. And then because testimonials are designed to be positive, right? They immediately lend themselves to be critiqued. So someone looking at a testimonial will go, yeah, but that could have been your brother who wrote the testimonial, and or you could have
yes.
wrote that yourself and posted it on your website. And I don't know if that's like, what's the story behind that,
And
right?
you might have picked out just the good bits
Yeah, right.
of
Which
the whole
is,
story.
which makes sense. We do that even when we're doing our resumes to apply for jobs. We highlight the best bits. We don't say,
Yes,
like
yes,
I had an argument with my manager and I left the company. Like we don't say those
yes.
sort of things. And so when you do a case study, and my position on that is when you do a case study, you're getting into depth. You're going beyond what's nice about your company to, well, here's our process, here's the
Mm,
challenge that the client came to us with. And so they were on the house was on the market for 10 months and they couldn't sell it for whatever reason, right?
mm,
And then they went to, they tried different vendors and had all kinds of problems, people trying to charge them too much, people having all kinds of issues, and then finally found Cheryl or Mark or whoever it is. And then, Mark took me through a process to actually get my house sold within 60 days, right? And we got the valuation we wanted, we got the purchase price we wanted, or even better, right? So then now you've got here's the process that we took the client through to get the outcome, right? And in that process, you might outline, you've got key connections, you've got key resources that you have access to because you've been in the industry for a number of years, or you've done
mm,
the work to get that credibility, or you've been certified in certain ways, right? So you're kind of highlighting, here's the specific challenge and the type of client I work with. And then you're presenting, here's the plan of attack, okay, that we worked out once we had the conversations with the client, and then here's the execution, and here's a final outcome. All
yeah.
right. So now you're giving a full, beginning to end, the promise to the delivery. And that is much more compelling than simply a statement that says, okay, you know, I worked with Cheryl and her VAs are amazing, right? That doesn't tell me anything, right? And that's one thing that I'm impressed by my clients and people, business owners, is your case studies need to have a clear metric and a tangible benefit at the end of that case study, right? It should say, you know, because I hired Cheryl's team, I saved 10 hours a week. And that freed me up to spend more time with my kids, right? So that's what your buyers want. They don't want outsourcing 10 hours. That's not what it is. It's what's the benefit of that 10 hours, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's why we use case studies.
Excellent. So how do we craft case studies as business owners? You know, how do we first of all get their client engaged into being part of a case study? And two, what are the things that we should be looking for when, you know, at what point do we go, oh, okay, I want to do a case study? Do we start tracking those metrics and all of that from the very beginning? Do we have to do that for it to be effective? Or can it be, you know, 10 months, 12 months on, I'd like to do a case study. Let's sit down and talk about what are the key things that we need to be considering?
I love that question. And I've outlined entire process that we perform for our clients in an ebook that you can go and grab on my website. So I won't go through all the depth of that, but I will answer the question, which is how soon should you be starting to look at case studies? I would say as soon as you get your first or second or third win with a client where you produce a tangible outcome for them, right? And if you're just starting the business today or tomorrow, next month, start thinking about what is the actual outcome or desired result that we can produce for the client, right? And that's what's going to differentiate you from other competitors who are out there in the world of fluffiness. I call it fluffiness because a lot of it's like, we are the best or we are number one, right? And you see that, like, if you even walk down the street and you see cafes or restaurants that have, we've got the best, you know, sweet chili crab in Sydney or whatever it is, and you go, really? You're right. Like, it's, you know, who's saying that? Your mom saying that? Like, who's like, where is that marketing spin, or is it actually because you've had, I don't know, 100 customers come through here and you're known for that? You know what I mean? Like, people go out and they tell their friends, hey, you got to go to that restaurant, or you got to go to that particular business because that's what they do and they're the best at it, because they've produced a specific outcome for me, right? So there's a difference, right? And so as soon as you can, that's when I would say start working through the process of tracking those metrics. Okay, so what is the metric that matches the benefit, right? So so to use my own business as an example, when I started Simple Creative Marketing, you know, it was really to save business owners time. It was like, okay, business owners were struggling with producing content on a regular basis. So for them, it was like, okay, that was how we initially pitched the service. And we got a few clients on board and that was fine. Over a period of 6 months, it quickly dawned on me that wasn't good enough. It wasn't a strong value proposition. And what our clients actually wanted were leads and sales, right? They were investing in content because they had read a book or seen Gary Vee, or they had whatever it was and had heard content is the thing, right? But the question really is, well, what is that content going to get you? And what, the feedback coming from the clients were, hey, this has been great. We've put all these blogs online that you've produced for us. We love the quality, right? But we're not getting leads and we're not getting sales. And that this has now become an expense, not an investment. Okay. And so I had to flip that and understand, okay, well, how do we do that better? Right. And so what we worked out was actually the best way to sell a service is to share proof that the service works, which is what case studies are, right?
Absolutely. And how did people then get that information from the client then to be able to craft a good case study?
Great. So the first step in the process is to actually contact the client. And then now when you're doing this, you don't want to say, hey, client, like, I want you to do a case study on you so then you can promote my business and get me more clients. Like, that's not the,
Why?
I mean, whilst that's the motivation, perhaps that's not what the client wants to hear, right? So it's actually, well, this is an opportunity. Look, they might be your best client. So you be honest, say, hey, you're actually one of our best clients. we loved that we were able to help you out and get you the thing that you wanted, whatever that was. Would you like to be featured? So remember this point, what phrasing you use here. So you're being featured as a case study for our business, right? So we can share your wins and celebrate that with you, and also hopefully that will help other people like you want to work with us as well, so we can also support them, right? So now you're coming from the I kind of position it like it's your 5 minutes of fame, like this is an opportunity for us to promote you, right? And if they've got a business, then you're actually promoting their business, which is a win for them. It's free promotion, right? It's also a collaborative process. So the next part of that is, once you've got the buy-in and they've gone, yes, would love to do that with you, then they always say, what's next? We say, well, we'll book in an interview, and usually that's about a 20-minute, 30-minute call I like to do. You can do a shorter version of that, which is 10 minutes, but I actually feel that you do need, it really comes down to interviewing skills, like how well and how fast can you get to the gold when you're talking with the client, right?
Yeah.
And so when you're asking questions like, what were some of the challenges or what were some of the considerations you had before you purchased our service or product, then you need to give them the space to consider that. And then, you might dig a bit deeper and say, well, did you have other vendors, or were you comparing us to other services out there? And why did you pick us? Right. And that type of questioning will elicit, what you're looking for is specific tangible things that were going through their thought process, and also the emotional, like why did they choose your service, your business over somebody else, right? Is it because they spoke to a salesperson in the other team or in another company and just didn't resonate? Or is it because they did their research and went onto Google and looked for reviews and went to your website and looked at their website, looked at your socials, and they went through all this? And this is what we do now, right? We do a ton of research before we even speak to the company. And so, you want to elicit their buying process. So when you understand that these are the steps that they took to buy, right? They went to Google and they typed in, virtual assistant property, or whatever it was, and your site came up, right? You want to know that, okay? Because then you understand that's how people find you and that's how they buy your service, right? And so we do about a 30-minute interview. We're asking them what challenges, that they had, why they chose us, okay? What was then also a really big part of this is what was the experience like working with our team, right? Good and bad. Like I'm not always looking for the good. I'm actually looking for opportunities to go back to the team or my clients and say, hey, we got some really great positive feedback here, and also some areas for improvement for your team, right? So I want to go back to my client and saying, well, here's something that they said, a comment they made that you might want to look into, right? And if you're doing it yourself, that's great, because then you're getting that feedback as well. So you can just sort of collect it and go, okay, well, here's something we can improve on, right? Yeah.
Is that something that you put in your case study as well?
That depends on the client. Like I will note it, and then the client will then determine whether or not they want to put that out. Because if it depends on what's raised. If the issue is something they can obviously fix, then that's fine, and they're addressing it. They can put that up. And it also depends on the level of transparency of the company putting out the case study. If it was me, I would, because I like to default to transparency, but some businesses don't want to do that. So it just depends.
Sure. Yeah. And I guess there's a good story if there is a good outcome that comes out of that, to be able to say as well, we've either taken on this feedback and we're doing this, and this, or this happened, which wasn't great at the time, but from then we've done this, and this, and it's improved. Here's
100%.
another sort of case study there. Video or article type case studies?
So this is about understanding who your prospects and buyers are, right? How do they like to consume the content, and where are they finding you? So this is important. So when you're speaking to your case study subject, you're asking them, how did you find us and what did you do to research us? And they say, well, I found this video, I was looking on YouTube, or I was listening to this podcast and you came up on someone's podcast, or whatever it may be. You kind of get a sense of, oh, okay, well, you like to read articles, or you like to, now I would recommend you do, at minimum, you do an article that sits on your website, because that will then help rank for Google.
Mm.
Okay, so I'm not going to go into a whole SEO conversation, but that's definitely something you want sitting on your website. Okay, now on that page, you can have both a combination of the video, because when I'm recording, I'm always recording in video format, right?
Mm.
So, and I'll ask permission from the client. It's important you get permission from the client to share whatever's recorded, right? Because they might say, oh, I don't want you to share that bit, or you know, I'm not happy with my face on camera, or whatever it may be. So you're going to have to get the buy-in again from the client on the format, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So before we do a draft, we have the video recording, we send the recording to the client. We also have the text version of it. So it's not just a transcript. We actually give it to a writer who then formats it into a story and puts it into a narrative, right? And a structure that makes it more compelling. So you don't want, because the thing is when you're interviewing someone, they just sharing stuff, you know, whatever's coming to their head, and it might not be clean, like they're saying things,
Yes.
and they might have, the way they speak might not be great, and whatever it may be, so you're going to have to clean some of that up, right?
Okay, so just
yeah.
on that point, when you say clean it up, like you said, it's not just the direct transcript. You're talking about actually building a story behind it and giving it more of a flow.
Yes, correct. So you want to go, and I've given you the format already. So we start with what's the problem or challenge. When you're framing the case study, you start with the headline usually. So, you know, whether it's a video you're sitting on YouTube or Facebook or whatever, or it's a blog post or an article. So you would start with the headline. What was this desired? What was the outcome? What result was achieved, right? Start there. And then you go into, okay, who the client is. So a bit of background about, you know, we work with XYZ client, they're this type of business or this type of company. And then you go, okay, what challenge did they come to you for, right? What did they try before coming to you? What didn't work for them, right? And then why did they select us? Okay, and then what was our process to understand the problem better? And then what did we implement to make it, to resolve the situation? And then the final sort of summary would be, and this was achieved. You restate the outcome achieved, right? So that's the format. And so when you're interviewing someone, you could interview it in that flow, but you know, you're not going to say, hey, what was the desired outcome? You know, like that doesn't make any sense to the client when you interview them, right? Like, you basically say, well, why did you come? What challenge did you have that made you search for a business like ours? Right.
Yes.
And then they go, oh, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Then you go a bit deeper and you go, well, why was that a problem for you? All right. So so there's a framework that I use, which is in the coaching world, which is asking the 5 whys. So usually we sort of stop at the first or the second why. But if you dig a bit deeper and ask, you know, a couple more whys, you get into more deeper sort of understanding of the motivation of the client, right? And they go, oh, really, it was, you know, I was struggling with this. My business was, you know, not generating enough leads or whatever it was. And I would say, well, okay, I get that issue, but why was that a problem for you specifically? It meant that I had to work another 10 hours every week, and that meant I couldn't go to my kid's birthday, and all like these things come up. And then you go, okay, so that's the motivation. It's really, you know, so by solving this problem, you know, you get your time back with your family, or you get to go on that trip that you always wanted to go on, or you get to bank another 10 grand in your bank account, which means your saving funds is increasing, and you can, you know, whatever it is, right? So it's really, as you can see, it's you're really interviewing someone to really understand them beyond what you normally would with, you know, what's your business do and why you're hiring us. It's like we're getting into, but how does it affect you in your role? Like if I'm interviewing a CEO, I would say, you know, what's your position in this? So if I'm interviewing someone on the team, right, you know, how has this success actually helped you in your role? Right? It's really important to understand that, because the person you're interviewing, if they are the prospect, if they are the buyer, their motivations might be different to the CEO, it might be different to somebody else in the company. So you want to get understanding of both. Right?
Yeah, I've got a comment here from Sean, and I'm going to come back to and shoot you another question. He says, "Hi Anthony, you're covering these topics really well, mate."
Oh, thanks, Sean.
Excellent. I think he knows his stuff, which is excellent. One of the most frustrating things we've found is inaccurate or less than honest testimonials to sort through to work out which services or products suit us best.
Yeah, exactly what I'm saying. Testimonials.
People are putting the, like Facebook, you put the good stuff on.
And the other issue we've seen is your competitors going and put negative reviews on Google.
Yes.
or they go and do negative stuff on, like that happened with Being Ninjas. Someone came and put a really negative rating and a negative review on the Facebook page. And our CEO started to freak out and was like, how do we handle that? Because it wasn't actually even a customer. We knew he wasn't a customer, right? And so you have to have, this is a side topic here, but you also want to have a process for checking your reviews on a regular basis and understanding, this is what we call reputation management, and really understand, okay, what do you do in those scenarios? If it's, my first response is, always address it, right? And unless it's really ridiculous and what they're saying just makes no sense. But if there's some valid point to it, and if it is a real client, then I would actually address it in that review and say, well, hey, this is what we did to attempt to resolve this. And if you want to talk about it, jump on a call with us, right? So that way other people who see that, they can see, okay, you've actually taken an action to resolve the problem. And the other thing I'd encourage you to do is to actually also talk to your clients who were successful and have done well with you, and have them go and, hey, can you go and respond to that? Can you go and add your own reviews and let people know, what it was like working with us and what results we produce for you, so that when you see one negative review versus 20, 30, 40, 50 positive reviews, okay, then, it kind of changes the equation in people's minds, right?
Yeah. And so for the people there who haven't done interviews or not really used to this sort of format, or even sort of that coaching, because even that the questioning around it is, to a certain extent, this is what we do in sales and marketing. How do we really squeeze out what the real, what is the real pain that people are feeling or whichever? Are there guides, and you probably have an ebook as well, that guides people as to how to question and how to get the best out of that video conversation to extract a really good case study?
Yeah, so it is in the ebook. So it's the questions that we use are in there, so you can go and grab that. I would also, you can just go to Google and search for like interviewing questions. There's one, like if you listen to podcasts, I would recommend just paying attention to the questions that podcast hosts asks. A couple that are really great, obviously Tim Ferriss and his podcast, his questions are amazing, and he's actually printed them on his website, so you can go and grab those.
Okay, yeah.
But specific for this purpose, I would say, what I've already shared, what was the specific challenge that you had, where that kind of was the trigger for you to search for a vendor like us, right? Or a business like ours? What had you tried before? What did you try to do or implement to try and solve the problem before you came to us? Why didn't it work, right? And customers will tell you, like, this is why it didn't work, or why they think it didn't work. And then you can say, okay, well, have you worked with other vendors like ours, and why did you leave them, right? So that gives insights. And then you get to, what was the experience like working with us, our team, right? What do you remember? What were the highlights, and what were perhaps some of the challenges, right? And then from there, the final bit of the last question I always ask is, if you were to recommend our business or our service to somebody else, a friend, a mate, or whatever it may be, over a drink, what would you say, right? And this one I learned from Dan Norris, who wrote a book called Content Machine, and he's got a new book coming out, which is going to be amazing. And he says it's important to put that, what would you say if you're having a drink with someone, and put it in that languaging, because you don't want them to get all professional and all wordy. You actually want, and like, you want them to say, if I was sitting with my buddy right now and we were having a coffee or a beer or whatever it was, I just go, yeah, I work with Cheryl and her team, and they just saved me a ton of work and time, and I was able to do this, right? So that's what you want. You want the languaging in their words, and this is copywriting 101 now. But the language you use in your marketing has to be the language that your customers are using themselves.
Yes.
Once we get all technical and experty, we lose our audience.
Yes, absolutely, because you can't resonate with them.
Yes.
And the message gets lost. Sean's saying something really, really lovely here. Since finding Cheryl and getting to know her, if we see she's given someone a tick of approval, we're in. Lots of LOL, best progress in our lives since. Oh, Sean, you're so good. Thank you for being here. But that's the other thing. It's like the power of having, I guess, that's why people get influencers. That's why, branding get Kim Kardashian or whichever. It's a brand as well that is providing, the power of having someone that is recognized. I'm not saying that's me, but I'm just saying, just in general, recognize, and then showing people their journey as well through a case study.
100%. It's about the journey. It's not always about the outcome. Is great. The outcome is the hook,
Yeah.
but it's actually the journey that people care about. It's those details, right?
Awesome. We're going to be wrapping up soon, Anthony. So I want to be able to give our audience sort of, I know we talked about quite a bit, but at least a top 5 tips in terms of putting together a great case study. And I know you've got your ebook. It sets out 15 steps. But let's talk about the top 5.
Yep. I'll talk about so the article is 15 ways to promote your business case studies. Let's run through the first 5 and then you can go check them out on my website.
Yeah.
First one is definitely announce your case study on social media. So, this is where we, as opposed to a testimonial where is, that statement where, hey, I worked with Anth and he was great. Switch that around and say, well, I worked with Anth, and because we worked with Anth, we had, 10 more leads this month or whatever it was. Like, get very specific on what that outcome was, right? And it doesn't have to be always dollars necessarily. It can be time savings. It can be emotional benefit. It can be, I'm thinking much clearer now, and therefore I'm able to communicate with my team better. That's a tangible benefit. It may not be measured right now in the way we see it, but that's what you would use, and you would link that back to the case study that's sitting on your website. Okay, so I would hire Cheryl's team and get them to do the socials. So you get that copy, nice image with the client's face or the client's logo. If they don't want any of that on there, that's fine, right? Again, you need permission for all of these things, right, from the client. And then link it to your case study. Number 1 is social media. Okay, number 2, I would say is to create on your page, on your website, a customer success stories page. Right. So there are 2 examples I provided in the blog post. One is Xero, who is an accounting software. So if you check out their meet our customers page, the way they've done it is fantastic. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And they really break it down by the types of businesses they work with. Right. I'm just looking at it right now. They've got like Loon Croissanteri. Loon is an amazing place in Melbourne. So they've got a patisserie, they've got a media company, they've got, so straight away you can see on their customers page the type of businesses they work with, and then if you click through, you get the specific case study of that client, right? So that's another one. You want to sort of build those over time, and then you have a page where you should be on your menu, so when people come to your site, they can see, oh, customers, boom, click through there, or customer wins, or customer success, whatever you want to call it. They can go and see your stories, and they can then start to see, oh, this is my type of business, and what they're looking for is their type of business represented, right? So this comes back to you understanding who your ideal customers are, right? And then number 3 would be to add, now we talked a lot about sort of the marketing aspect. Now I want to talk a little bit, switch over to sales, okay? So where case studies are really compelling is in the proposal stage. And I know in real estate, in property, we're always sending proposals and these sort of things. So when you're sending a proposal, that is a really great time to include a case study. Like you actually want to say, and you think about who the proposal is going to, and you want to make sure you choose the case study that matches as close as possible that type of client, right? And so we've done this for SEM, but we've also done it with Being Ninjas. We actually have a tool that we use called Better Proposals. If you haven't used that, highly recommend it. Just makes proposal writing, like you do templates, and it makes it really quick and easy to send them out, and also tracks things, and you can actually get customers to pay through the proposal software as well. And we've included within the template, here's 2 or 3 case studies that we sort of pick and choose from depending on who the client is, right? And that basically, it's that essentially that whole article that sits on our website, we put it into the proposal software. So it sits there, right? And they're reading it as it goes. So that's number 3.
Just on that point, would you recommend, and not so much recommend, whether that or just linking someone, say if you've got a YouTube page with all your testimonials or your website page, why would you have, because I'm assuming you'd have a few pages of that proposal with the case studies. Would it not, why have you chosen that format as opposed to one page that says, hey, you can check out our proposals here, here's the link?
So in the proposal, we only include one relevant case study. We don't give a whole lot because you don't want to like oversell and you don't want
That's right.
to go crazy
Yes.
with it. And we do have a link at the bottom saying if you want to check out others, click here, and that sends the person to our website.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
But yeah, good question. And in the buying process, when someone's reviewing and they're analyzing a proposal, you really don't want them to, you don't want to send them anywhere else. You want them to look at the proposal, right? And then
True.
go
Yes.
through it, right? So good question. So that's 3. Number 4, I would say, is to sneak it into, we say sneak into your signature. So at the bottom of your signature, your email signature, you want to say, hey, here's a story of us helping
PS.
XYZ company, right? Click here to read more, right? Very simple and very easy to do. And your entire team should have that on there. Not just you, the salesperson or the marketing person. Everyone in your team should have that in their email signature, especially if they're dealing with external clients, right? If it's only internal, then it doesn't matter. But for I'm talking about external facing communications. And then the 5th one is this might be well, if you like Chaz and I, we were out there doing presentations and webinars and these sort of things, getting onto podcasts, then you also want to include your case studies in your talks, right? So when you put together your slide deck, you want to make sure that you're embedding within that. I would aim for 3 different case studies. And as you're telling the story and educating people on what you do and whatever it is that you're teaching, you want to use, a great way to teach is to use examples, right? We learn from examples, right? So here's, Margaret, and this is how we help Margaret achieve X. And, and so you might not do the whole full case study that you would put on your website, but you want to sort of do a shortened version of that in your talk and go, okay, here was the outcome. Here's the 1 or 2 things that we did. And this is the challenge that the customer came in with, right? So, and that's a really good way to, again, leverage this case study that you put a ton of effort into producing already, and then using it in other places. So we're really repurposing the content, if you will. So there are 5 ways that you can definitely start off with.
Excellent. I think we don't realize, and it's great that you set out just the 5 because there's obviously more. I'd love if you can pop the link to the chat or find, the landing page, whichever. I'll pop it in the event as well. Because I think often many people sort of go, okay, case study, it's just going to sit there. But you're already giving us lots of ideas as to, no, you can get lots of different channels into that case study and how powerful that one piece of material can potentially be as well.
Yeah, the biggest, and this is our mission, right, for our business, is to actually simplify the content process, because a lot of businesses get caught up in this assumption that you have to be a content machine and you got to be constantly pumping out content and but it takes, Gary Vee has a team of like 40 people doing that for him, right? So for us small business owners, we don't have that, right? So we want to think about how do we get the best leverage for the material that we're producing. And so this really is about I'm just dropping the link in there for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you.
There you go. But yeah, it's how do we produce the case study? I'll delete that.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I'm not great at multitasking, as you can see. So produce the case study and then look at multiple ways to leverage that, right, and get the best return on that investment.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Anthony. Love your work. Love the stuff that you are constantly rolling out, because your content is so immensely valuable. I said I've been following you for, I think, a good part of 10 years now. Shows how old we are. Yeah, yes. I go by how old my daughter is, because I was pregnant at the time.
That's right.
She's 7 now, so it's good 8 I think. But if anyone needs to really fine tune their marketing, their message, their content, reach out to Anthony. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, I've dropped the link into the chat there. Just go to simplecreativemarketing.com. I'm more active on LinkedIn these days than I am on Facebook, but I am there. So yeah, they're probably the best ways. And website, you can get all the socials once you go to my website.
Fabulous. Thank you. Stay safe. Be well. Thank you for joining me for a coffee.
Yeah.
I've only had half off so far.
I can get my coffee now.
Yeah, exactly. Have a great day. Thanks for your time, Anthony. And thank you for sharing your nuggets of knowledge as well. And I'll see you very soon.
And thank you for hosting these virtual coffees. I'm loving them, and just keep them up. They're a great way. This is content marketing at its best, by the way,
Oh,
everyone.
there you
So,
go. We
you
love
know,
it. It's
video, I haven't mentioned it in this conversation, but I will now. Video is where it's at for 2020 and 2021. If you're not doing video, you're in trouble. Like that's where you need to be on all the platforms.
yeah, yeah. And see, it's for me, it's multitasking. We get to catch up with you. I get to send out messages to people, and I get to chat to other people as well. How good is that?
That's the way you do it. That's why you are
Exactly.
the property
The,
VA.
we're the multitasking queens. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again very soon. Thanks, everyone. Ciao,
Thanks,
ciao.
everyone.
Bye bye.